YouTube, AWOL Spartan here, coming at you with another episode of War Thunder. And I admittedly took about a week off with Thanksgiving having been, or with Thanksgiving coming up. I ended up taking about a week off, but now that that's passed, I'm now back into full production. So we're making more videos now. Figured I'd start off with the La-7. Now, recently I saw a video on a channel that I'm subscribed to called Mags TV. Mags is a really good pilot, and he's very good at this game. In fact, I've learned a lot about these different types of aircraft through watching his videos, so I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. I'll also leave a link to the particular video that I'm referencing in this video, or in the description of this video. He recently did one where he talks about the advantages of gaining altitude even in planes that don't perform well at high altitudes. The plane he used in that video was the P-51 Mustang, the Tier 3 P-51 Mustang with the Hispano cannons. Now, this plane, it doesn't climb very well at all. In fact, he even mentions that in his video, that this plane is probably one of the worst, if not the absolute worst, climbing plane in its battle rating. And but he goes on to give an explanation as to why it climbs so poorly. But he also gives various different tips on how you can get around this problem. Now, personally, before I get into that, like I said, there are planes that perform very poorly at high altitudes, and this is one of them. I believe this is the C model P-51. It wasn't until you got to the P-51D, which is in Tier 4, that the P-51 really came in its own and became a really outstanding high altitude fighter. But the ones before that were they were outfitted with Allison engines, which weren't anywhere near as powerful as the Merlin engine, which powered the D variant. That being said, this plane is best used at mid to low altitudes. You gotta fly it like it's a Russian plane. And speaking of Russians, today's video, I'm going to be taking up the La-7, which is another plane that suffers from very poor performance at high altitudes. Now, I'm going to try to implement some of the tactics that Mags suggests in his video. However, and I'm having to salvage the footage from the replay system because my recording software didn't work properly when I originally played the game, so it's going to be from the replay system. But you'll see I try to implement some of the strategies that he suggests, and it just doesn't work out for me. I prefer to fly my planes within the parameters that gives them the best performance. So the La-7, and really for the most part, all of the Russian fighters or all of the single-engine Russian fighters, they tend to perform at their best anywhere from 10,000 feet and below. These are low-altitude fighters. So I'm going to pull up the replay system, and we will get started. Okay, so as you can see, we're in our La-7. We're taking off just now, and this is where I first start implementing one of the tactics that Mags suggests in his latest video, and that is the use of spiral climbing. In War Thunder, typically whenever a battle starts, one team takes off and they all fly in one or two directions, depending on, or they split off into one of two directions usually, and it's very predictable. So basically everybody on the other team knows exactly where everybody on my team is, and so by using spiral climbing, what you do is you climb around the airfield, kind of like I'm doing now. As you pass the end of the airfield, you turn around and you continue to climb. Now, what I'm doing here, going to try to get up to 10,000 feet. And then once I reach 10,000 feet, I turn back in towards the rest of the battle. Now, I'm going to keep these other interfaces open just so that everybody just so that you can kind of get an idea of what it is that I'm up against whenever I realize that these tactics are not working for me. They work for some, they don't work for all. Me, like I said before, I prefer to keep my plane in an area where I'm going to get the most performance out of it, or the best performance out of it, rather. Okay, so I've reached my target altitude, and now I am basically flying back in towards the battle, and I'm scanning for targets. Now, I don't want to give up altitude too quickly, or and leave anybody above me, because usually that one pilot that you ignore and leave up at high altitude is the one that comes back to bite you in the ass later. Now, unfortunately, in this video, using these tactics by climbing up to this to 20,000 feet, I have taken the La-7 to a place where it was never designed to go, and so the performance of the plane is going to suffer a lot from it. By coming up here where the air is thinner, the engine loses its ability to WEP, and it doesn't turn as well as it does at low altitudes. So I'm basically cutting my own legs off by coming up here in this particular plane. And that's going to show here in just a moment, because I'm going to get clipped by a P-47 and a P-51, and I'm going to have to retreat and go land. So I found my first two targets. They're these, the P-47 and the P-51. So I see Vader's wingman coming in, so I end up turning into him because the P-47 has just dove away from the fight. One tactic you always want to use whenever somebody's bearing down on you like that is to turn into them and under them. By doing that, you're limiting the amount of time that you spend in their crosshairs. Unfortunately, at higher altitudes, the P-47 maneuvers a bit better at higher altitudes and higher speeds, whereas my plane is quite a bit sluggish, and right here I've just taken critical damage from the P-51, and I now have to get out of here. So I dive away and pretty much abandon the idea of keeping this plane at those altitudes. I decide to dive away and keep it at an altitude where I'm going to get the best performance out of it. Now, one benefit from going up to high altitude like that is whenever I took that critical damage, all I had to do was dive away. Now, the P-51 and the P-47 can dive with me, but they didn't want to give up their altitude while there were still other players alive on my team, and they didn't know where they were. So by diving away, I actually ended up saving myself. Okay, we're taking off again, and if you look at the teams, you'll notice it's just me in my La-7 and one other player on my team in a Yak-9T versus 5 enemies. And it's about to get a little bit more dicey because my Yak-9 friend is about to meet his maker. I decide instead of just taking off hunting after the enemy team, I decided to take off and try to provide cover for the Yak-9. So I decided to linger around by the airfield because I figured if any enemies were going to turn up, they were going to come to me. The airfield would be an obvious place to look. See the Yak-9 just touched down. He's going to start repairing and rearming here pretty soon. I turn around and eventually an enemy is going to appear. And there he is, P-47 Thunderbolt. The AAA was going crazy right here, and that was what tipped me off that there was somebody nearby. I just didn't realize he was way up there until just that moment. But now that you've seen what the La-5 can do at high altitude, how poor its performance is, now we're going to take this thing down to low altitude, where this thing is where the La-5 isn't necessarily king, but it's definitely in its element. Turn into the P-47, duck under his guns. Now I'm never going to be able to catch a P-47 like this. He's way too fast. I need to wait for him to make a mistake. So I'm trying to stay near the airfield and bait him. Try to get him to come after me again. Because at this altitude, the La-7 is far more maneuverable than the P-47. And we're going to turn back into him, try to take a few pot shots head on, and then get out of the way before his rounds make it to me. Roll out. He goes for the Yak-9, and the Yak-9 does the same thing. He rolls out. He's also much more maneuverable than the P-47 is. Here's where the P-47 made his first mistake. He didn't climb quite as drastically as he should have. He should have pulled up at a much steeper angle, because the speed he had accumulated, he could have easily outpaced me in a climb with that level of speed. But since he didn't, I was able to close distance on him here. Because in a straight line, the La-7 has very good acceleration below 10,000 feet. As you can see, I'm catching it now, and he knows it. And so he decides, and this is where he makes his second mistake. He engages in a dogfight with me. Rather than sticking to boom and zoom, he decides now it's time to start turning and burning. The P-47 was not suited to that type of battle, but he did just win a head-on with a Yak-9T. And now you'll notice the odds have dropped. They have dropped, the odds are now stacked a little bit more heavily in his favor, because it's a 1v4 now. But another mistake that the enemy team made in this was they didn't swarm me. They came after me one at a time, which I was perfectly fine with. I mean, I was able to gun each and every one of them down pretty easily in a one-on-one battle. And there's a pilot snipe right there. One kill. Turn back towards my airfield, because at this point I've already expended about half of the ammunition that the La-7 carries. But as I'm turning back towards the airfield, I notice another plane is coming in, and he's telegraphed his position because he's passing over the airfield on my right. And the AAA is going to start going off and lighting and giving away his position. See? There he was. P-51 Mustang. Again, another plane that I can easily outperform at low altitudes. So take some pot shots at him. Took a small but insignificant hit, or rather two small but insignificant hits from him. They didn't really do any damage. But then again, he made the same mistake that the P-47 did and starts engaging in a turning battle with me, in which I have the upper hand at this altitude. So now he's realized his mistake. He's trying to fly as low as he can within these houses, trying to evade me. But it doesn't do him too well. In one of those hits I did enough damage to mess up one of his wings, and he ended up cartwheeling into one of those buildings. So now I'm really low on ammo. I think I only had about 47 rounds left at this point, and I turn and check 6, and there's a Firefly coming in. Now the Firefly, if the P-47 and the P-51 didn't stand any chance, this Firefly has about a snowball's chance in hell. The P-47 and the P-51 are both much faster than the Firefly, and they actually climb better than the Firefly from what I've seen. This Firefly had no chance. His only real chance was to hope that I had run out of ammunition, and then he'd have a chance to get me. As you can see, he can't maintain the climb. I have the altitude advantage over him, even at this low altitude. So it's just a matter of me trying to jockey for position so I can get a decent shot in on him, and I missed this first one here. As you can see, terrible shooting on my part. But the La-7 also has better acceleration than the Firefly, so I was able to open the distance pretty easily. You can see I'm already about 1.5 kilometers away from him. Okay, I'm over 2 kilometers away. I've broken enough distance, and I've gained just enough altitude to stay out of reach. I turn it around, and once again, he tries to climb up after me, but his plane simply cannot handle that steep of an incline. He's going to stall, and then it's lights out for the Firefly. There he goes, stalling. Wing it over. He's low and he's slow, and he is a very easy target. And there you go, he's lit up. And now I am legitimately out of ammo, so I'll come back as soon as the last enemy, or I'm going to cut this part out and we'll come back when the last guy shows himself. And as it turns out, I didn't have to wait very long. The last guy shows up. He's in a P-47 D-28. I am at low altitude with no ammunition, and I'm basically at this point have to use the AAA around my airfield as a shield. I can dogfight him, but I have absolutely no ammunition. This guy has absolutely no clue how close he was to winning this battle for his team. But as luck would have it, the AAA at my airfield, their aim was true, and I was able to come away with a very nice victory. as you can see, he just got lit up, and that's the end of the battle. He is going to burn, and that's going to be the end of it. And as you can see here on my replay screen, first place for the team with 3 kills. Just goes to show that if you use your plane's strengths to your advantage, you can even turn something as dire as a 1 versus 4 situation into a victory. So with that, I'm going to bring this video to an end. Leave any comments for any planes you want to see me fly, and click that subscribe button. Thank you. I'll see you in the next video.